Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today I have my special white blood cell friend here to help me talk about some tropes that I like, which is infectious diseases in books. So we'll just put him down. But I feel like I've talked about this several times in some of my recent videos, and some of you may be like, well, that's kind of a weird thing to be into. So I figured I would provide some context as to why I'm interested in infectious diseases in my books and give you guys some examples of some infectious diseases in fiction books that I enjoy. So to start off with, I'm a PhD student in biostatistics, and my research has involved Ebola, typhoid fever, and malaria. So I think this is just a really cool thing to study. I take part in advancing science and, being a part of public health studies. So I think that's really interesting. And if, anybody is interested in hearing me talk a little bit more about what it is that I actually do, I can certainly do that. So just feel free to let me know. But let's get into some of the books that I like. So one thing I should say getting into these books is that I don't really care how scientifically accurate these books are. I just want some infectious diseases in my books. So the first one I think that we should talk about is The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. Basically, like an alien spacecraft lands somewhere in the desert in Arizona, and this unknown virus thing starts killing everybody, and the scientists end up studying it, and it's a very good Michael Crichton book if you haven't read it before. It's has some twists and turns. I don't want to spoil things too much, but I would highly recommend reading it. It's, I think, one of my favorite Michael Crichton books. And evidently, I think they're coming out with a sequel to it, even though Michael Crichton died. I don't know if somebody's picking up from his notes or what exactly, but I'm looking forward to that. The next book I'm going to talk about, or series of books I guess, is the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin. So I actually don't have my copy here. It's back home with my parents, as are most of my books, unfortunately. But so this is, I'm sure several of you probably already know this. There's basically a virus that causes vampirism, or people to turn into vampires. So I really like this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I know some people don't tend to like it all that much. I think it is a pretty long book. When I read it, I really enjoyed how it kind of slowly walked us through the spread of the vampire, I guess, plague, if you want to call it that, and just how the apocalypse happened in this world. Passage is, it's a vampire book. I didn't love the second and third books in the trilogy as much. Like I said, I gave The Passage, which is book 1, 5 out of 5 stars, and then I gave books 2 and 3, I think both 3 stars. So I would say, if you're interested in The Passage, it's available in mass market paperback, so that I pick it up there or perhaps borrow it from the library. I think the second and third books you maybe want to borrow from the library unless you're really invested in the story. Because, they were good, but not as good as the first one, in my opinion. The next book I'm going to talk about is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. So this one is, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend buying it in paperback. But this basically is told from dual time frames. So we've got before the giant, I think it's a flu epidemic, breaks out, and then after the epidemic happens. So the post-apocalyptic portion follows I think it's a Shakespeare troupe. And there's, I think, it's been a while since I've read this, but I seem to remember there being a cult leader that they have to escape from. But it's really good. I highly recommend it. I think a lot of people really enjoy it. Another book I'm going to talk about is The Last One by Alexandra Oliva. So I borrowed this from the library last year, I think, so I don't have it to show you. But this, I really enjoyed. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So I would recommend buying it. I think it's available in paperback, so you may as well, pick it up there. It starts out by following a contestant in a survivalist show, but during this survivalist show, there's a massive epidemic that kills a whole bunch of people. So it walks us through the show, and then at some point, people start dying, and one of the contestants that we follow isn't quite sure if this is part of the show itself and the obstacles that they have to overcome, or real life. So that was really interesting. The next book or book series I'm going to talk about is The Seventh Plague by James Rowlands. So I think, to be honest, I can't remember if there are more books in his series that deal with plagues. And I read this a while ago, so I can't really tell you what it's about. But I think the premise is like, there's like a virus or something that is exposed from global warming and like the melting permafrost. And so that ends up killing a whole bunch of people and, trying to figure out what's going on. But generally, I really like his books. They're just fun adventure books. His books have like a historical and scientific note, so you can like see what aspects of the book he's pulling from actual life versus fiction. So I like that a lot. The next books I'm going to talk about are the Empress Game books by Rhonda Mason. So this is book 1, which is just called The Empress Game, and this is book 2, which is The Empress Game Cloak of War. So I talked about book 3 in July wrap-up, I think, and I was just like how disappointed I was in it. So I would recommend reading the first 2 books, don't read the third. But basically, like I've said, I think before, in this book, there's like a gladiator competition to become the next empress. But also in this world, there's a deadly nanovirus. These are fun books. Again, read books 1 and 2, don't read book 3. Okay, the next 2 books I'm going to show you are Lock-In by John Scalzi and Head On, which is the sequel to Lock-In. There's a contagious virus that causes people to be locked in. So what this means is like they're fully aware of everything happening, but they can't move their body, which honestly sounds really terrifying. But so some of these locked-in individuals have like a robotic body, and I think they actually refer to them as like 3POs, like a derogatory term for C-3PO, like from Star Wars. But anyway, there's also humans that can integrate with these locked-in individuals. So like the locked-in individuals can control these integrators' bodies. So these 2 books are actually more of like a murder mystery, and the virus is sort of like in the background, but I really enjoyed both of these books. I want to say I gave them both 5 out of 5. Another book series that I'm going to talk about is The Expanse by James S.A. Corey, and this one is the first one, which is Leviathan Wakes. This is sort of like an epic sci-fi space opera, I want to say, where there's like a proto-molecule, like an engineered molecule that kind of wreaks havoc. That's just like one aspect of the entire series, but it's a really good space opera series. I will say I didn't love book 1 as much, but after that I think it really picked up. So if you're interested in it, stick with it. Perhaps borrow the first one from the library and see if you're interested in it, and if you did enjoy it, then maybe pick up the rest of them. And they come out, I think, in these like gigantic paperbacks. They're currently on book 8 just came out in hardcover. And I want to say it's a 9-book series, so eventually all of them will be out in these like gigantic paperbacks, so you can purchase them if you just so choose. The next book I'm going to talk about, I've already talked about several times already in some of my videos, but that's Salvation Day by Kelly Wallace. So if you're new to my channel and haven't heard me talk about this already, there's like what they think is a virus that kills a whole bunch of people on the ship except for one boy. And this story follows that boy like 20 or something years later teaming up with this girl who's trying to find a place for her family to live, to try to figure out what is this virus, what happened to all these people originally, like why did they all die. It was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Obviously I did buy it in hardcover. So if this sounds really interesting to you, I would go ahead and pick it up. Otherwise, you can wait for the paperback or obviously always the library. The next book I'm going to talk about is Illuminae, which is the first book in the Illuminae files by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. So this is a YA book that's told in this like really interesting format where we've got like various documents, emails, transcripts and things like that. I don't know if you can see. But anyway, so this first book has like an evil AI trying to control a ship, and there is like a deadly virus that breaks out and turns people into, I can't remember if they're like zombie-like or vampire-like, but anyway, they kind of go crazy and try to kill everybody. But I really like this. I think it's maybe not for everybody. I originally borrowed this from the library because I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to like this format. But it turns out I did. So I ended up buying this a little bit later, as well as books 2 and 3. So I think I gave this one 4 out of 5. The sequel, Gemina, I gave 5 out of 5, I think. And then the third one, Obsidio, I want to say I gave 4 out of 5. Can't exactly remember, but I mean, it is YA, so you get like a little bit of the insta-love situation. But I thought it was really cool. I mean, they have like some crazy ways to tell the story. Like, you get pages like this, which is kind of funky. The next book I'm going to talk about is Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. So this came out fairly recently, I think. But it's the start of a new series, and basically we've got some cadets of this Aurora Academy. So there are a lot of the main characters, but then we also have Aurora, pictured on the cover, who they find like trapped in cryosleep after like 200 years or something. So again, it is YA, so you get a lot of like the kind of insta-lovey, like crushy high school sort of stuff. But I didn't really mind it all that much. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I think, I mean, obviously I bought it in hardcover, but if you do find this description interesting, pick it up in hardcover or wait for it in paperback. But this may be like a mild spoiler, I'm not sure. But there is I can't remember if it's a virus or like a fungusy thing that comes up later in the story. But this was fun. It's not told in the same format as Illuminae, but it was still good. Next series I'm going to talk about is the Newsflesh trilogy by Mira Grant. So I borrowed these from the library, so I don't have them to show you. The premise behind these books is that 2 viruses end up like merging together into a super virus that causes zombieism. So the story generally follows like this post-apocalyptic world where in America where there's zombies everywhere. They're trying to kind of keep society going, but social media becomes like a big way to get your information. So you've got like bloggers and whatnot who are like the trusted news people now. So what I will say, I think I gave 4 out of 5 stars for each of the books in the trilogy. There's like a spin-off book that retells the first book from a different point of view, and I didn't love that as much, so I gave that 3 out of 5 stars. And then there's like a collection of short stories in this world, which I actually really like, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. The bloggers are trying to figure out the story behind these viruses and like what happened, and is there a conspiracy theory. So I did enjoy this. I will say I find that in this and the next series that I'm going to talk about of hers, she tends to repeat certain phrases a lot, and that kind of got a little bit annoying. So if you are going to read these books, I would say space them out so that you're not just like, you don't notice it quite as much. The next series I'm going to talk about is also by Mira Grant, and I also borrowed it from the library. So that's the Parasitology trilogy. In these books, there's like a genetically engineered tapeworm that eliminates all sorts of diseases and stuff, but basically it ends up with the tapeworms trying to take over people. So I don't think this was quite as good as the Newsflesh trilogy. I think I gave all of these books 3 out of 5 stars. So like if you're interested in it, I would definitely say pick it up from the library. Like I don't know if I would buy it and reread it again, but like Newsflesh, maybe I would reread that again. So I think they came out with an omnibus in paperback, so you can pick the Newsflesh trilogy up. But anyway, again, with like the repeated phrases all over the place. So if that bothers you, again, I would space these books out so you're not just like repeatedly seeing these things over and over and over. Next, I'm going to talk about World War Z by Max Brooks. So, I mean, this is just like a little random tidbit. He randomly was at Utah when I was in undergrad, just like talking to us about how to like survive the zombie apocalypse. And it was like a Q&A session. So I actually did meet him. But this book, I'm like, it's been everywhere. I think it's a flu pandemic. This is also told in like this kind of funky format like Illuminae, where it's just like transcripts of interviews and then talking to people. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. It's not one of my favorites. I have not seen the movie, but I've heard it like differs from the book considerably. So, I don't know how that is. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. So I've talked about this in a couple of my videos, I think. But this is like a unique take on zombieism where a fungus actually causes zombieism. So this follows a young girl, Melanie, who's a zombie, but she's like a high-functioning zombie. So these kids are being studied to, figure out why they're able to function and not immediately try to eat everybody's brains. First part of the book takes place in this like kind of school where they're studying the kids, and then things happen and it kind of expands beyond that. But I don't know, I liked it. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I would say if you're really interested in it, pick it up in the paperback. Otherwise, maybe borrow it from the library. It was, yeah, like a unique take on zombieism, so that was cool. But otherwise, meh. I have not seen the movie. I would be interested in watching it to see how it compares and if it's any better or worse. We'll see. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Genius Plague by David Walton. So in this book, it basically, this is a little stretching infectious diseases, but a fungus takes over human brains and controls them. The people who have been taken over by the fungus, basically form a hive mind. They're trying to work together. So the main character is I think his brother is infected with the fungus, but he's trying to figure out what's happening and how to stop it. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was super unique. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So I would recommend picking it up. I think it's only available in paperback, perhaps. So a little cheaper for you. So I want to end this by I guess just mentioning that I have read The Stand by Stephen King. I didn't really enjoy it. I think I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I read it a while ago. But I just felt like it went on too long, but it's sort of a similar feel to The Passage. So I don't know if you read The Stand first, you don't really like The Passage, or vice versa. But it's I think it's like a flu pandemic and just, explores post-apocalyptic stuff. But again, not my favorite. I would say, if you're really interested in it, maybe pick it up from the library. I don't know. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it. And finally, I think one of the Robert Langdon books, I want to say Inferno by Dan Brown. There's some sort of bioterrorism plot. I don't really remember it. It was not my favorite, so I won't talk about that all that much more. But yeah, so I'm sure there's books that I've forgotten to mention. Or books that I'm not aware of. So feel free to ask me about other books that you're aware of that I might be interested in, or just recommend them to me. I would greatly appreciate that. So I think I will wrap it up here and see you guys in the next one.